are perceived psychotics and schizophrenics essentially have one foot in the spiritual dimensions and one foot in the physical realm. So they are literally a conduit for spirit matter to be expressed in the physical, but they have no idea this is happening. So they are just channeling chaotically, and that's what word salad is. Hello, gorgeous soul friends. Welcome to my channel, Madame DeVoe. Thank you so much for tuning in and for allowing me into your wondrous earth experience today. So I've been wanting to make this video for a while, but I've held off on it specifically because this topic can be quite a sensitive one and there's a lot of varying viewpoints on it. I want to make a little disclaimer. It's not my intention to trigger any negative feelings, but rather provide a perspective that can be empowering for people experiencing mental dis-ease, so that we can transform our view of ourselves and in turn transform the world around us. So I apologize for the delay, guys. I had to kind of restructure the formatting of these videos and the way I was rolling these videos out, because I was originally going to make a series on the different symbols within the tarot and how to kind of break them down and understand them. But in the middle of making that video, I had this epiphany. I should make a video about channeling. So I had to go back, plan this video out, put it out, and then in the coming weeks, I'll be rolling out my series on the tarot. Because channeling is foundational to understand tarot. You have to have an understanding of channeling if you want to truly have an understanding of tarot. And on top of all of that, I also broke my finger. So that put me back a little bit as well. So I am back. I'm uploading content again. It's really great to be here with you guys and to upload. I've really missed you. So before we discuss the esoteric roots of mental dis-ease, such as psychosis, and I really will get into how much I despise that word, let's talk a little bit about the phenomena of channeling, because it is a pretty misunderstood concept, and it's really a normal thing, and it's something that is pretty mundane, that like we're all doing all the time, and it's just kind of seen as like this, ooh, channeling, mystical thing. But I mean, it's very magical, don't get me wrong. Like, just because this is something normal and inherent to us does not take the magic away from it. But it isn't something that is as mysterious as people make it out to be. And I just kind of want to clear up all of that mystery, because where there's mystery, it leaves room for assumptions to be made. And oftentimes, especially with the stigma that occult teachings get and esotericism gets, those stigmas are typically negative. So here we're going to be clearing up all of that and discussing the facts and the root of what channeling is, how it's working, and how you can tap into your channeling abilities. So we've already discussed in my Energy Body series that this reality is holographic, and it's essentially a fluid ocean of varying frequency. And our bodies are similar to radio receivers in the sense that we are constantly absorbing and expelling etheric matter into our own pocket of this ocean, also known as our auric field or our toroidal field. When we absorb this energy, it reflects in our subjective experiences, and this reflection can happen in the form of thoughts, ideas, emotions, things that we say or do, or things that people say or do to us, because we are all connected to this universal database of information. And the act of drawing in information from this universal database, and this universal database is commonly known as the Akasha or the Akashic Records, drawing in information from that database and turning it into something that is physical, tangible, and perceived by those who are maybe not as aware of their connection to this Akasha is known as channeling. Channeling can manifest in many, many forms. Art is a perfect example and a very popular form of channeling. But the most well-known form, particularly in this community, is specifically through divination practices such as tarot. But the cards are not necessary for effective channeling. They really just serve as a guide to help a psychic ground their channelings, so that they can build a sense of trust for their ability. So the tarot cards are essentially just a translation guide for the language of energy. That's all they're doing. They're just translating the energetic language into something that we can interpret. And once again, I'm going to be diving deeper into the tarot in my series on the tarot cards. But I just thought I would upload this video first because, once again, it is necessary to understand channeling. If you want to be a good reader, you have to know what channeling is and how it's working. So channeling is really just a word used to describe the process of manifesting spirit matter into the material so that it can be perceived by others. We are all materializing spirit matter into physical matter, be it manifesting your new house or sketching out a design for a project, or taking universal wisdom and channeling it into informative YouTube videos. So it is simply the intake of spirit matter paired with the release of it. Now, this process of intake and release is happening in every single human, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's always happening constructively. Negative channeling does occur, and it occurs when somebody doesn't have a proper outlet. People who don't have outlets uncontrollably dispel their channeled energy onto people and things around them. A perfect example being someone who has taken on a lot of stress energy from their boss who's micromanaging them all day. If our hypothetical employee goes home stressed out and doesn't have a proper outlet to expel and channel this stress into, they are likely going to expel it in other ways that are deconstructive, whether it's onto people in their life, messing with their relationships, or into activities that are deconstructive. Energy is always just being transferred, it never goes away. We are always taking on and releasing energy, and you can either release it in ways that are deconstructive to your life, or you can release it in ways that are constructive for your life. The projection and expelling of this energy is often reflective of how it was taken on in the first place. Like people who abuse children usually in most cases experience their own abuse as a child, and instead of channeling their trauma into something that promotes personal development, they project it and further perpetuate this cycle of abuse. But it doesn't always have to be bad. Have you ever met those people that are obsessed with one particular thing, like politics, for example? I think this is something that a lot of people can relate to. They're super passionate about politics and they won't ever shut up about it, and they always have to make everything about politics and all of that, right? And I'm talking extremism here. Like, it's okay to talk about your passions, it's okay to like things, it's okay to be interested in certain things, but when an outlet for those passions is lacking, they're still going to come out, and often to the point where it dominates the entirety of one's thought process, and this can be hindering in effective relationship development. Part of the entire purpose of taking on a human form is to experience your passions and to experience the things that you enjoy and channel your energy into them, because we are biologically engineered with these passions and callings. It's for a reason. And a great movie that encapsulates this concept is Soul by Pixar. It is an excellent film, and it talks all about that, pre-birth planning, all of that jazz. But regular conscious channeling is critical for optimal mental health. And I think this is something that mainstream psychology can sometimes overlook. The field of psych is something that is becoming more and more spiritually rooted as we raise our collective awareness. It's finally beginning to take into account the subtle frequencies that exist outside of our brain and which affect its function. But for a long time, it didn't. And this lack of awareness has been detrimental, if you ask me, like absolutely detrimental. As I discuss in my videos, all humans are psychically connected. We all have the propensity to connect with our spirit self, and we can all tap into the Akasha. However, there are certain environmental and genetic factors that play a role in someone's awareness to this connection. So everyone falls somewhere along the spectrum of unconscious or conscious psychic ability. The psychic ability in unconscious people most often goes unnoticed because either A, it's completely unbeknownst to them and it literally doesn't exist, like they have no reference for what they're experiencing, or B, there is some level of disbelief. So they'll have a few experiences here and there, but those experiences are often minimal because they're usually brushed off as something that is, just nothing. And if you know anything about working with the subtle energies of the Earth Matrix and the alternate dimensions that lie within it, you know that belief plays a pretty large role, because confirmation bias is a thing, and people who inherently deny the existence of anything outside of our third dimensional experience are going to seek out circumstances that confirm that belief, which means they won't be consciously perceiving a lot of mystical shit. And when they do, they'll usually brush it off as their imagination, not realizing that their imagination is their personalized access to the spirit dimensions. But that is a topic for its own video. Back to my point. The suppression of occult knowledge in Western culture has directly contributed to every single problem in society. Specifically, the mental health epidemic for the sake of this video. There's a really fantastic TED Talk that I'm going to recommend called Psychosis or Spiritual Awakening, and I'll go ahead and link it down in the description box below. It breaks down the difference between our culture's response to perceived psychotic symptoms in comparison to tribal societies, and how the only real difference between someone who is a gifted channeler versus a psychotic is the nurturing versus ostracizing of one's symptoms and experiences. People who are perceived psychotics and schizophrenics essentially have one foot in the spiritual dimensions and one foot in the physical realm. So they are literally a conduit for spirit matter to be expressed in the physical, but they have no idea this is happening. So they are just channeling chaotically, and that's what word salad is. Skilled shaman experience the same symptoms that people in the West do, but instead of being stamped with stigmatizing labels such as psychotic or schizophrenic, they have a mentor who comes and nurtures and encourages these abilities. Paired with the fact that tribal cultures very much embrace their connection with spirit, rather than denying anything outside of their own mundane understanding of what they can immediately perceive. It's also not a coincidence that the symptoms of schizophrenia literally parallel directly the symptoms of spiritual awakening. The onset of schizophrenic symptoms also parallel the age when many shamans report having their spiritual awakening, around their late teens, early adulthood. Ironically, the same time when a lot of people begin to enter the workforce. And I want to make a note that when children report hearing voices and seeing things that aren't there, they're deemed as being imaginative and creative and having imaginary friends. But when an adult does it, it's dysfunctional. It's almost like, these labels are being intentionally used in a way that promotes a rejection of one's psychic gifts so that they can continue to be cogs in this work-heavy system. Spiritual awakening kind of yanks the rug out from under your feet because it's such a paradigm-shattering realignment to the life wave that everything existing beforehand falls away suddenly. Anything that is not in alignment with your inherent passions and callings will fall away. And this usually manifests as the sudden losses that often happen with spiritual awakening. And this can contribute to, a lack of motivation, depression. Psychotic symptoms are often paired with symptoms of depression, lack of motivation, all of that stuff. And then on top of that, demonizing these people only further perpetuates those symptoms. And please feel free to share your experience in the comment box below. I would love to hear about your guys' experiences, your spiritual awakening processes and all of that. And you never know who you may be validating out there, because there's quite a bit of people who go through this stuff completely on their own with zero support whatsoever. And that's why I stress this video's disclaimer so heavy, because I don't really care if this is triggering anyone. Like, we need to stop being so sensitive and have these necessary conversations, because this needs to be talked about. It is hindering us as a species. It is hindering the growth of us. It is hindering our progression. Reality really is stranger than fiction, guys. I've seen a lot of unbelievable shit that if I didn't have that support from my parents and just from, the people that I associated with, I would have definitely thought I was crazy. And many people get deemed crazy and all of these other damaging labels with zero understanding of the crazy things that they're even perceiving. And that's such a vulnerable place to be mentally. It's no wonder people go to such great lengths to deny, because they're afraid. They're afraid of being perceived as crazy. And a perfect example of this, I spoke with a friend of mine a few months back, and, she was telling me about her art, and she had all of these sketches that were kind of dark. They were a little dark in nature, but that's fine, right? Art is something that is undefinable. It is whatever you perceive it as. It is whatever you express it as. That is your art. It's very different for everybody. And there are styles of art that are a little darker. But when she showed me these sketches, she was like, you're one of the only people I've ever shown these to. I'm really afraid to show these to people because I don't want them to think I'm disturbed. That's specifically what she used. I don't want them to think I'm disturbed. She also said she didn't want people to think she was crazy. But she was so worried about what her friends and what other people would think about her if she were to show people this art. So I think it's kind of the same thing when a lot of people experience some of these unexplainable things that happen in the world that are completely normal and we have a definition and an explanation for a lot of these things in the occult world, but because of the fact that occult practice has been seen as taboo for so long, people reject that. And this is because we still hold on to a lot of the trauma from the persecution that's happened over the centuries. It kind of manifests in the behaviors of people, even in the occult community. There's a lot of suppression even in this community, and I have a video talking about that if you want to go watch that whenever you have some free time. So a lot of these activated psychics who have no idea they're even having psychic experiences begin to question their sanity because they have no resource to ground the psychic information they're receiving into something that makes sense to them. Channeling, even for us seasoned psychics, can be an intense experience. Have you ever watched Tyler Henry channel for celebrities? He sweats, he turns red, his palms get sweaty, he even reports getting lightheaded. I want to say that one episode, like, he either almost passed out or like he was, he did pass out. I can't remember. Because being a conduit for the material and non-material realm takes a lot of energy. It's very taxing. And that's why the feminine energy is inherently a restful energy. The feminine archetype is inherently restful because she is in constant connection with spirit, which sometimes requires more energy than even physical activity. But because it's not measured with our five senses, because it's not measured and it can't be detected by other people, they think it's fake. They think you're being lazy, but you're not. Most people are not lazy. They're just burnt out because they're channeling all the fucking time and they don't even know. So frustrating. So this questioning of one's sanity most often manifests in the homes of people who are not spiritual or very anti-spiritual, not connected to faith of any kind. People of faith can sometimes be fearful of ESP, but some religious people do embrace these abilities. They consider it talking to God, which technically, yes, that is what's happening, except God it's not an actual man, it's a source of timeless sentience that you can pull information from. But I think people who struggle the most with embracing psychic gifts are those who are very materially rooted. So people who are anti-spiritual. And there is a push towards anti-spirituality. This anti-spiritualism push is a byproduct of the tyranny of the reign of the Catholic Church over the course of centuries. I would even argue that the scientism movement is a covertly evolved version of the church's influence on our society. Especially when you consider the fact that most scientific and medical terminology is in Latin, centuries later. And for what? It's a dead language. The structure of Western civilization over the course of centuries has been carefully directed down a path that keeps things in life overcomplicated so that you lack understanding of them. And that's even why the English language, which is the primary language in the West, is so ridiculously complex, and it doesn't have to be. It's much easier to control individuals who are scared and confused, and we're seeing this happen on a mass scale outside of the mental health crisis with current events that are going on. There's this collective manifestation of mass psychosis, which After School has a fantastic video on. I'll link it in the description box below. You can check out their videos. They have excellent content, so highly recommend their channel. But they're basically breaking down this idea that we are being collectively driven into a state of mental dis-ease through means of careful media manipulation. Kind of like poisoning the water supply, except for the water is the content you're consuming on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So I just want to conclude this video by asking, are you really the one that's crazy? Or is this hyper-hustle structure of society just too crazy for you? I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for tuning in today and for listening to what I have to say on this topic. I will be back soon with my series on the tarot. This will kind of lay the foundation for that video to roll out, for those set of videos to roll out, because it's going to be a pretty long series. I'm going to be breaking down the major arcana and the different suits within the minor arcana, as well as the court cards. They will each have their own video. So it's going to be a pretty long series. I can't wait to roll it out for you guys, but thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic week. Take care, guys. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.